Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at the week starting on Monday, November the 3rd, 2025. It's going to be a fairly brief video, probably not lasting any longer than half an hour. And this video will have two sections. First section, I'll be looking at astrology, and then I'll be looking at the I Ching. In the astrology, I'll just be looking at the main events taking place over the course of a week. I mean, main events in terms of astrology, for example, Mars moving into Sagittarius. And then in the last part of the video, I'll be doing an I Ching reading for the week, which will have four sections, a general section, then money, and then career and business, and finally relationships. So let's start with the astrology. Here is the chart for the very beginning of a week, set for midnight on Monday, November the 3rd, New York time. So you can see from this chart that Mars is in the last degree of Scorpio, getting ready to move into Sagittarius. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. And so on Tuesday, we have Mars moving into Sagittarius. That is a big change. Mars has been in Scorpio for some time, approximately 6 weeks. It's been in a water sign, and it's been quite strong in a water sign. But Mars is quite intense in Scorpio. Then it moves into Sagittarius. Mercury is already in Sagittarius, so Mars in Sagittarius might mean that there's just more energy. Mars is now in a fire sign. There is perhaps a spark which wasn't there before. And Mars, just before it moves into Sagittarius, makes a trine to Neptune. So Mars, right at the end of Scorpio, absolute, totally, very absolute end of Scorpio, Mars makes that trine. And so that Mars trine, well, it's a trine. I mean, I don't think that a trine need be a hugely significant aspect, but Mars trine Neptune may be about what we are putting our energy into at the beginning of a week. It could be with Mars trine Neptune that we can put our energy into things of a spiritual nature, exploring sort of emotional and religious things, perhaps thinking about what we believe in, putting our energy into causes. That's how Mars trine Neptune can work. I mean, Neptune can be a cause. It may not be a very good cause, but it can still be an ideology and something that we might perhaps be excited about. And then with that Mars trine Neptune, well, Mars makes a couple of aspects at the beginning of a week. It's not just that Mars trine Neptune. So Mars makes a trine to Neptune, goes into Sagittarius, and then it makes an opposition to Uranus. So Mars opposition Uranus is quite a serious aspect. It can be. I mean, astrologers get worried about Mars opposition Uranus because they see Mars opposition Uranus as being about accidents, mishaps, things going wrong, explosions. It's heavy duty, and if you got Mars opposition, if Mars opposition Uranus is affecting something important in your horoscope, you do need to be aware of that. So we need to think about the first degree of immutable signs. Again, I will be going into detail about this later in the week when I do my horoscopes for Tuesday. What does that mean, first degree of mutable sign? I mean, for example, Ukraine has got its sun at 0 degrees Virgo. And so has the NATO ratification chart. So that might be an area that one might be looking at with Mars moving into Sagittarius. But there are going to be other things to consider. Mars, Zelensky has got his Mars at 0 degrees Leo. So Zelensky is going to have Mars trine Mars at the beginning of next week. So I wonder how that's going to work out. Perhaps I'll be looking at it in a few days' time. But no, that Mars opposition Uranus, we should not underestimate that aspect. And it's probably, the big aspect of the week. Then we've got a full moon on Wednesday at 13 degrees 23 Taurus. So you've got the Sun in Scorpio, Moon in Taurus. Full moons are, always important events, things that we really do have to consider and have to describe, and it could be about realizing something. We see the full picture for better or for worse. And then Thursday got Mars sextile Pluto. That might be quite constructive, something to apply our energy to, but again, I'll be looking at that in more detail, over the course of next week. Now, over the weekend, we have got two important events. Firstly, we've got Uranus moving into Taurus. So we've had Uranus moving in through Gemini for quite a few months, but Uranus has gone retrograde. Now we have a final visit to the sign of Taurus, and this is perhaps going to be a time of reflection, maybe. I mean, Uranus is not going to be in Taurus for very long. It's just a brief return to Taurus, and it might mean that is it going to be about stability? Is it going to be about stubbornness? And of course, might appear that Uranus is retrograding back towards Algol. It doesn't get that far. I mean, let me be a bit more precise on this. So, how far does Uranus go back? I should have checked this earlier, but looking at the ephemeris, Uranus goes retrograde. It goes direct at 27:27 at the beginning of February. 27:27 Taurus. So that might be a date to look out for. It's not too far from Algol, that rather evil fixed star. And then Uranus returns to Gemini in late April. So for the beginning of the year, we do have Uranus in Taurus. So there could be a change of emphasis, a return to something that we thought had gone. And I'll be talking about that over the course of a week. But I mean, that's certainly something we need to be thinking about. And then Mercury goes retrograde. It does happen every now and then. So Mercury goes retrograde at the beginning of Sagittarius. It goes back into Scorpio. So, is that something to look forward to, Mercury going back into Scorpio? Well, this week, having Mercury retrograde at the end of a week, maybe if there's anything you want to sort out, get it done if you haven't done so already. This week, we've got a full moon at the beginning of a week. The moon will be waning, and then Mercury is going to be retrograde. And Uranus going back into Taurus. So perhaps the past isn't entirely finished with us, and perhaps we have to just stop what we're doing, just for the moment. So that's the week. Quite a lot of things going on. Mercury retrograde, Uranus going into Taurus, full moon, Mars opposition Uranus. So it looks potentially like being quite a hectic and busy week. So now it's time to switch to the I Ching. So when I talk about the I Ching, do remember that this is optional. If you don't want your I Ching read, you don't have to have it read. It only applies to those who are actually watching the I Ching section of this video. And this reading is divided into four parts. Firstly, a general reading, then money, then career and business, and finally relationships. So I asked the question, what is the week starting on Monday, November the 3rd going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 48. Remember, this section is just a general reading, just a general idea about what the week might be like. And we have hexagram 48, the well, and the well doesn't move. And the fact that the well doesn't move, because there are no moving lines here, tells us something about the week ahead. And the well is a fairly stationary hexagram anyway. So this I Ching reading kind of contradicts what's going on astrologically. So if you've been listening to the astrology section, I was saying that there's real action here, a lot of things going on. It does seem to be a week of movement, but the I Ching seems to contradict this. So remember, the I Ching is something quite subjective. It's about you. It only applies to people who are watching this video. So maybe in the world in general, things are going on, but maybe for you, because you've decided to watch this video, maybe not so much is going on, and you have to think about what the well is all about. And the well is about stability. It's about stability within change. And one of the ideas of the well is that every city needs water. It doesn't matter what happens with that city. You can have technology, you can have a medieval city, you can have a 21st century city, you can have a nomadic, post-nomadic settlement. Doesn't matter. You still need water, and it is about permanence, within change. And so you need to think about what is important to you, what is fundamental, and is it well run. And one way of looking at the well is looking at it in terms of the government. There's always government, like it or not. Okay, it might to an extent depend on what country you're living in, but certainly if you're in the UK or the US, you've had consistent government for centuries. People might not like that government, but there's been a relatively stable transfer from one government to another. And of course, in the UK and the US, you haven't had sort of kind of occupation and anarchy, the sort of anarchy of occupation, and the occupation falling apart, and so perhaps the UK and the US governments would be the prime example of the well. But governments change, and governments change. They do change, but they're always there, and it's important to have good government if you want to keep things together. And it's likewise with the well. You need to have a good source of water, a good source of nourishment and sustenance. And so that is what that's what you really need to think about. What is it? What is the permanent thing in your life? The thing that you always need to look after. And you just need to make sure that it is properly looked after. And there is a suggestion here, because the well has come up, that maybe you need to attend to it. It just could be something that you almost take for granted. It's always there, but maybe you need to have another look. Perhaps it needs to be repaired or fixed, or you just need to make sure that it is in good repair. And that is an issue with wells. I mean, wells, you need to make sure that you're able to put the bucket down the well and draw the water, and you've got to make sure that the lining of a well is sorted out. You don't want the water being contaminated by falling masonry or whatever else it might be. So that is perhaps something that you need to do over the course of a week. And it also may say something about your relationship to others, because the underlying hexagram, the nuclear hexagram of the well, because I look at the nuclear hexagram simply because there are no moving lines, so I just want some added information. And the nuclear hexagram is hexagram number 38, which is opposition, and it might mean that we're very aware of perhaps the differences between ourselves and other people. Some of us might feel alone, or alone not because we're miserable about it, but we're just feeling different. We're at odds with other people, and that tension, that underlying tension, could be undermining. It could undermine our ability to look after ourselves, or perhaps we feel that we do have to look after ourselves. We have to be responsible for our own sustenance, going back to the well. And that's not really the way it should be. I mean, there is a view, that, in terms of the I Ching, that you could regard, I think the I Ching was suggesting, or one translation was suggesting, that you've got 9 parts to the I Ching. I'm not saying you have got 9 parts, but you might perceive 9 parts, and you've got 8 parts, and you've got a part in the middle, and the part in the middle represents the common ground, and that's where the well is. The well is there to serve everyone, so there should be a kind of a sustenance that we should all benefit from. But when you've got the underlying hexagram, the nuclear hexagram of the well, maybe part of the problem is that everyone is looking after themselves. They're looking after their own interests, and they're not looking about the common interest, and they're not looking out for common goods. Common goods is about something that everyone can share from, and this could perhaps represent some sort of factionalism. You've got different people arguing with each other, complaining, being territorial, possessive, and in the process just forgetting about what we all own, what we can all share from. So although the well itself is not a particularly problematic hexagram, it's not dramatic, it may be sort of hiding or concealing some frictions within society, or perhaps within our family, or within our grouping. If we're going into work, with perhaps something that needs to be resolved and perhaps repaired as well. So do think about it. So that's a general view, and now I want to look at things from a perspective of money. So from a financial point of view, firstly, we have a hexagram that is not moving, the well, and so that could indicate that from a financial viewpoint, whatever you're thinking, there isn't necessarily much going to be going on. Perhaps you were hoping for some financial advance, or something to happen, for money to come your way, and with a locked hexagram, that might not be likely. But it suggests that nothing bad is going to happen, nothing too bad is going to happen. But there is a more serious message here, and the well kind of represents the money you always have. It could represent, what do they call it, the nest egg, your emergency fund, however you want to see it. Something you just know you've got some money there. Now, you might not have any money there. I mean, that is possible. And, if that is the case, then the well is perhaps inviting you to do something about it. It is telling you that you do need to have something set aside, and it's also reminding you of the importance of money. Money means sustenance, and perhaps it's something that you haven't really thought about. And it's not like there's an emergency going on here. I mean, absolutely not, because there are no moving lines, and it just could be that you've made assumptions about your own financial security, that there's perhaps money coming in, or the money will be coming in. Who knows what that's about? It could be about your bank account. It could be about a pension. It could be about money you'd assumed was going to come your way, maybe a legacy. And it's always there, and that's the way it's always been. And you might be looking at the past. Always in the past. Perhaps not just for you, but your parents, your grandparents. The money's always been there in one shape or form, and now it's down to you. You need to make sure that it is in order, and if there's any source of income you have, if you have a source of income, or maybe it's a property, something you're renting out, or maybe shares that have dividends, whatever that source of income, just have another look at it. I'm not giving any financial advice here, but just make sure that whatever is sustaining you financially is in good shape, and don't take things for granted. And because there are no moving lines, that might indicate there's no pressure, no immediate pressure. So it's a good opportunity to get it sorted out, or to just or to reassure yourself that everything is in order. And we do have an underlying hexagram. The nuclear hexagram is opposition. And with this nuclear hexagram, I think that from a financial viewpoint, you might feel quite alone. There's a feeling that it's kind of down to you. You're responsible for making sure the money comes in. No one else is responsible. Now, I'm not saying that is necessarily a good thing, because when you're dealing with the well, you should be thinking about the collective, the group. What is sustaining the group financially? What is sustaining your family financially? Perhaps in the past you'd expected people to come together and sort out their own finances, but with the opposition, there seems to have underlying this, and your concern about making sure that the money is coming in. Perhaps you've just lost touch with people who may be financially relevant, and the challenge might be to bring everything together. And if this is particularly the case if there's any kind of joint financial arrangement. And then there is career, and we have the well, career and business. The well, the well possibly represents what you have, what's always there for you. Now, the well could be seen as your abilities, what you're good at, what your experience is. If you've got a particular set of experiences, if you've got relevant experience that you can put on your resume and it just doesn't change, it's always there, then the well is saying, well, you can benefit from it. It should be there for you. But what the I Ching often says is that the well sometimes needs to be repaired. So it could be that you have a set of skills that you have built up over your lifetime, certainly your adult lifetime, that you may have kind of slightly taken for granted. And you think about updating them. And so have another look at what you can do, what you do. Have another look also at what's happening economically. And of course, everyone is obsessed about AI and ChatGPT and people being made redundant because of progress in AI. And how do you keep relevant? Now, this I Ching is saying that you can keep relevant, whatever it is, you're able to keep relevant. But that doesn't mean to say you're going to do it, because you might be complacent, and all the while you might have a set of skills which is becoming derelict, outdated, not because the skill is itself outdated, but because you haven't done the fine-tuning. And so it's really asking you not to be complacent, but there is no pressure, because there are no moving lines. There's nothing that you have to do, and it may be you'll do nothing, but you would be advised to really think about what sustains you. And also this is going to be relevant if you have a job, particularly the kind of job that you've had for a long time, whether it's your own business or if you've been working for a company for a long time. That's very much a well idea, because it's just always there for you, and you need to make sure that your position really is good. So if you're if you've got your own business, don't be complacent. Really think about what needs to be changed. If you've been doing a job for decades, again, don't be complacent. Think about what could go wrong. Update things. Find out what's happening. And it's not. I'm not saying anything bad is going to happen, it's just warning against complacency. And you may feel that a lot of it you have to do on your own, but it is down to you. And the underlying nuclear hexagram to the well is hexagram number 38, which is opposition. And I think that you do have a certain feeling in regard to your work or your business that you are alone, that you are not getting a huge amount of support, and it's down to you to make everything happen and make sure that everything is in its place. And this, going back to the well, don't rely on other people to sort things out or to make sure that everything is in order, that everything is running properly. It quite possibly is down to you, at least in the first instance. I mean, maybe at a later stage you can bring people in and get people to take things seriously, but right now, if you want something to happen, if you want to make sure that you continue to be relevant, and that you continue to be in the center of things, and that you continue to be sustained by your work, then it's down to you to take action. But you don't have to take. It's not about taking huge amounts of action. It's just about just checking everything, checking that everything is in order. And finally, we have relationships. And so hexagram 48, the well, is talking about the relationships which are always there. It's not the casual relationships. It's not the people we meet in the street and they move on. It's about the way relationships are constellated. And so who do you take for granted? Who are the people there, just always there for you? I mean, it could be close friends, it could be your family, it could be someone you're married to or in a long-term relationship with. It's those kind of people, where the emphasis is. And it's important that you don't take anyone for granted. I mean, you need these people around you. I mean that's the way you've structured things. And, whatever those people are, I think most people have at least someone in their life who they've assumed will always be there. And the well is perhaps asking you to make sure that those relationships are in good order, because wells need to be repaired. Things go wrong. Yeah, people do take each other for granted. So look at the important bedrock relationships in your life, the ones that sustain you, and just make sure that you haven't taken anything for granted. Make sure you haven't taken anyone for granted, because it could be that under the surface things are not quite as good as they should be, because the nuclear hexagram to the well is opposition. Wynkoop calls this hexagram 38, he calls it estrangement. So perhaps ever so slightly, you and some other people, the important people, are becoming ever so slightly estranged. Maybe you haven't been talking as much as you have been. Maybe there's been slight irritation, even if you're dealing with someone who you've known for decades, who maybe even if you've been living with them for decades, still something needs to be repaired, something needs to be fixed. And it's not an emergency, because there are no moving lines. And there is definitely something you can do about it. And it's just about attending to detail. And I don't think it's a matter of it being anyone's fault. Could be you taking someone for granted. Maybe it could be someone else taking someone for granted. But don't get caught up in big dramas. I know astrologically there's a lot of drama this week, but the I Ching gives a different view. You don't have to go over the top. You just have to make sure that the social and interpersonal bedrock of your life is in good order. And I think that you can quietly make the repairs if they need be, if need be. But just inspect the situation, think about it, think about how you are relating, and that I think is the way forward. So those are my I Ching readings for the week across those 4 sections. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again very soon.